At Thanksgiving dinner, my sister said, "It's funny how some people still think they matter here." I almost left until my grandma slid me a note that said, "You matter more than you know." I'm Isla. I'm 35, single, and I work as a librarian at a small public library in Lexington, Kentucky. My life isn't glamorous, and I never claimed it was. I live quietly, I take care of myself, I love my job, and I make just enough to be comfortable. I'm not flashy, not the center of attention, but I've always tried to be a reliable person who shows up when others won't. My family dynamic is complicated. My parents, Frank and Helena, were married for 27 years until my dad had an affair with a woman named Sylvia from his office. I was 24 when he left. It completely broke my mom. And it broke me too, because I watched the woman who raised me dissolve into someone who barely got out of bed for a year. During that time, my younger sister Mireille, who was only 20 then, chose to live with Dad and Sylvia. Mireille is beautiful, stylish, incredibly smart, and extremely good at saying the right thing to the right people. But beneath all of that, she's sharp in ways that feel like paper cuts. You never see the hurt coming, but you feel it afterward. I didn't fight with her about choosing Dad. I just stayed. I stayed with Mom, helped her back on her feet, drove her to therapy appointments, helped her clean out the closet Dad left behind. No one asked me to. I just did it because she needed someone. Over the years, Mireille and I drifted further apart. She started working in PR in Chicago, and every time we'd talk, she'd make these casual little comments about how I liked the small life or how I was probably happier without all the chaos of a real city. I always let it go. I thought, maybe that's just who she is. Maybe she doesn't realize how she sounds. But I also realized that I wasn't in her world anymore. I wasn't someone she considered an equal, or even a person whose feelings were worth much. Thanksgiving 2024 was supposed to be a reunion. My grandma Celeste is 82 and recently had a minor heart attack. She's doing okay now, but she said she wanted one more Thanksgiving with everyone under her roof. She's lived in Bardstown her whole life, and her little craftsman house has hosted decades of family dinners. I didn't want to go. I almost made up an excuse. But something told me I'd regret it if I didn't show up for her. So I made 2 pumpkin pies from a bakery downtown, put on my nicest dress boots, and drove the 90 minutes to Bardstown. When I got there, the house was already full. Mireille was in the kitchen drinking wine with Dad and Sylvia, chatting like they were the picture of holiday charm. Mom was helping Grandma with mashed potatoes. I greeted everyone as politely as I could. Grandma pulled me in for a long hug and whispered, "You being here means everything." Dinner started around 5 p.m. It was your classic Southern Thanksgiving turkey, stuffing, mac and cheese, collard greens, deviled eggs, green beans with crispy onions. Grandma had made everything herself. The food was perfect. The company, not so much. At first, the conversation was safe. Dad talked about his recent golf trip. Sylvia showed pictures of her daughter's engagement ring. Mireille commented on the wine and how Bardstown was quaint but not sad. I listened. I nodded. I didn't try to stand out or insert myself. That's just not my way. Then dessert came out. We were passing around plates of pecan pie and coffee when Mireille leaned back in her chair and, with a little smirk, said, "It's funny how some people still think they matter here." She said it casually, like it was a joke. But she was staring directly at me. For a moment, the table went completely still. I didn't say anything. My heart was pounding in my ears. My hand started shaking, and I set down my fork before I dropped it. My mom looked at her plate. Dad reached for more whipped cream. No one said a word. I pushed my chair back and stood up. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just felt the room tighten around me, and I needed to breathe. I started walking toward the kitchen when I felt a tug on my sweater. It was Grandma. She reached across the table and slipped a folded note into my hand. I looked down. It was her old stationery pink roses around the edge. Inside, in her slightly shaky handwriting, it said, "You matter more than you know." That one line stopped me from walking out the door. I sat back down. I didn't eat another bite. I barely spoke. But I didn't leave. After everyone had moved to the living room, Grandma came into the kitchen where I was pretending to do dishes I'd already cleaned. She dried her hands on a towel and said, "You know why people like your sister talk like that?" I shook my head. Because they need to believe they're the most important person in every room. And the moment someone doesn't play along, they feel small. I let out a shaky breath. I'm tired, Grandma. I'm tired of being polite. Of being quiet. She nodded. Then stop being quiet. You're allowed to take up space. I didn't say anything else, but I felt something shift inside me. The next morning, Mary tried to make small talk while everyone was packing up. She said something about doing next year's Thanksgiving in Chicago and how she could curate a better experience. And for the first time, I didn't just nod. I looked at her and said, "I think I'll pass." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "I think I'll be with Grandma again next year. If she's up for it." Mary stared at me for a moment, and then laughed. Not the happy kind, but I'm not used to being told no kind. And I just smiled. Because for the first time in years, I felt like I had power again. The drive back to Lexington was quiet. I kept the radio off, my thoughts loud enough. Every time I replayed Mary's comment, "It's funny how some people still think they matter here." I imagined different responses I could have said. But no matter how I rewrote the moment in my head, nothing gave me the same peace as Grandma's note. That piece of paper stayed folded in the pocket of my coat. I held onto it like a lifeline. Back home, I unpacked the leftovers Grandma had insisted I take: sweet potato casserole, 2 slices of turkey, and cornbread stuffing, and placed them in my fridge without much thought. I wasn't hungry. Instead, I curled up on the couch and stared at the ceiling. It hit me then, in a slow, settling kind of way, I'd spent most of my adult life making myself smaller so other people could feel big. Not because I thought I was less than, but because I was told directly or indirectly that my pain didn't count as much. That I wasn't the priority. Mary had always been good at that. Redefining situations to suit her narrative. If she was cruel, it was because you were too sensitive. If she forgot something important to you, it was because she was so busy. And if you finally got tired of it, you were being dramatic. She never said it with malice. That was the trick. Everything she said came with a smile. And yet, her words lingered in me like a slow-acting poison. The next week, my mom called. Her voice was soft, tentative. "Hi, sweetheart. I just wanted to check on you." I hesitated. "I'm fine." She sighed. I heard what Mary said. I didn't know how to respond. "I'm sorry." It was the first time in a long time that she'd acknowledged anything uncomfortable without trying to smooth it over. That alone made my eyes sting. "I wish you had said something," I admitted. "I wish I had too," she said. But I froze. I've been freezing for years, Isla. I think I got used to Mary being difficult. And I guess I let her take the lead more than I should have. There was a long pause between us. The kind of pause that comes when old truths start rising to the surface, shy and awkward. "I want to do better," she added. "I don't need you to take sides, Mom. I just want to feel like someone sees it." "See me?" "I do. I see you more than you think." After that call, things shifted slightly with my mom. She started calling more. We talked about mundane things, recipes, the library, the weather, but under that was something warmer. She was trying. 2 weeks later, I got a group text from Miri. "Hey everyone. Thinking of doing a winter brunch when I'm in town next month. Mimosas and a full spread at Dad's. Who's in?" I didn't respond. My phone stayed silent for 2 days until she texted me directly, "Hey. Did you get my invite?" I typed out, "Yes." I'm not coming. I hovered over the send button for a long time. Then, I deleted it. Instead, I replied, I don't think that's a good idea for me. Hope you all enjoy it. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. Nothing else. That was Mireille. Always wanting to be the one to end the conversation. But I didn't need more from her. I wasn't doing this to change her. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done in years. Every night before bed, I wrote one thing I did that day that mattered. Not to anyone else, but to me. One night, it was, I took a walk and didn't rush home for once. Another, I recommended a book to a teenage girl who lit up like I'd given her treasure. Another, I said no to something I didn't want to do and I didn't feel guilty about it. These were small things, but they were real. Mine. Meanwhile, I got updates through my mom. Mireille's brunch had gone ahead. It was cute and very Instagrammable, as my mom described it. She'd brought themed napkins, a Polaroid camera, and insisted on a signature cocktail. It was nice, my mom said over the phone. But, something about it felt off. What do you mean? I think Mireille thought if everything looked perfect, no one would ask any hard questions. I didn't say anything, but I knew exactly what she meant. Then came the Christmas season. Grandma invited me for Christmas Eve dinner. This time, she kept it small, just me, her, and my mom. It was warm and quiet. She made a pot roast, and we sat around the fire with soft carols playing in the background. As we drank hot cocoa, Grandma looked over her glasses at me and said, I meant every word in that note. I know. You think I don't see what goes on, but I do. Your father walked out on all of us, not just your mother. Your sister pretends that wasn't a betrayal because it didn't hit her the same. But you stayed. You held the pieces. That's not nothing. I looked down at my cocoa. It still hurts. She reached across the armrest and placed her hand over mine. Of course it does. That's how you know you're alive. That night, I stayed a little longer than I meant to. I helped Grandma with dishes, and we talked about books and her old neighbors and how Bardstown had changed. She asked about the library, about the kids who came in after school, and I told her stories I didn't even realize I'd remembered. Before I left, she gave me another small note, tucked into a Christmas card. This one said, Don't let anyone dim what makes you steady. The world has too many performers. We need anchors, too. The days between Christmas and New Year's always feel suspended, like time pauses to take a breath. I went back to work at the library during that week, and it was quiet, just the occasional retired couple picking up cookbooks, parents grabbing storybooks for restless kids, and a few college students hiding from their families. I kept Grandma's new note inside my planner, folded neatly next to the old one. Every morning, before unlocking the front doors, I'd look at them for just a moment. Not long. Just enough to remind myself that someone saw me. Then, in early January, Mireille called me. She never calls. She texts. Her number flashing on my screen was so unexpected, I stared at it for 3 full rings before I answered. Hey, she said, her voice clipped but calm. Hi. There was a pause. I just wanted to clear the air, I guess. My stomach turned a little. About what? Oh, come on. Thanksgiving. That whole thing. I was just making a joke. It wasn't meant to be serious. I closed my eyes. A joke at my expense. She let out a little laugh, almost defensive. You always take things too seriously. I don't think anyone would have taken that lightly, Mireille. Another pause. Look, I'm trying here. I invited you to brunch. I reached out. You said something deeply hurtful and didn't apologize. Then you invited me to an event with people who didn't speak up either. That's not making it right, that's pretending it never happened. Wow, she said, a little too flatly. I guess you're still mad. I let the silence hang in the air. Honestly, Mireille, I said, finally, I'm not mad. I'm just done pretending it doesn't hurt. She didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was low, almost muttering. Well, I tried. And then she hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time afterward. Not because I was upset, exactly. But because something had settled inside me. Like the final brick on a wall I didn't realize I'd been building. I wasn't going to chase after her again. I wasn't going to explain myself or shrink so she could feel taller. It was quiet after that. No texts, no awkward invitations, no passive-aggressive family updates through the grapevine. My mom stayed in regular contact, though. She even started coming to visit me once a month, just for a quiet weekend of movies and takeout. In late February, she surprised me by bringing over a box of old photo albums. I thought you might want to look through these, she said. I found them cleaning out the attic. There's pictures of you and Mary when you were little. I sat cross-legged on my living room floor while she curled up on the couch, thumbing through the albums one by one. There was a picture of me at age 9, holding a ribbon from a school art contest. I was beaming, my paint-splattered hands raised like I'd just won a marathon. Then one of Mary in middle school, grinning in a sparkly dress at some pageant. Then a photo of both of us on the front steps of Grandma's house, me in a book-themed Halloween costume, her as a princess. I remembered that Halloween. She had thrown a tantrum because I got more candy, and Mom made me give her some of mine to keep the peace. Looking back, I saw the pattern more clearly. Mary wasn't always the way she is now. But somewhere along the way, she learned that attention and affection were earned with performance, not presence. And I learned that peace came from being quiet. It made sense. Sad sense, but still. When I closed the last album, my mom said quietly, I think I failed you both in different ways. You were just trying to survive, I replied. So was I. She nodded. Still. I should have protected you more. I didn't absolve her. But I didn't blame her either. The truth was, we were all carrying baggage someone else had packed. March came and went, and with it, the first daffodils in my small front yard. I started spending weekends planting herbs, listening to old jazz albums on my porch, and inviting a few friends over for casual dinners. Nothing fancy. But it was the kind of life that felt like mine again. In early April, I got an email from Sylvia, Dad's wife. Subject line, hope you're well. Inside, a brief message, Hi Isla, I heard from Frank that things at Thanksgiving were a bit tense. I hope you're okay. We'd love to have you for dinner sometime. No pressure. Just wanted to extend the invite. I stared at it for a while, unsure what it was supposed to mean. Was it a peace offering? A guilt move? Or did Sylvia just want to smooth things over on the surface? I didn't respond. Not because I was angry. But because I didn't feel the need to explain my silence anymore. One Saturday morning, I visited Grandma again. She was out in her small garden, kneeling among the tulips with her sun hat on crookedly. You look busy, I said, bringing her a thermos of coffee. Always, she said with a grin. These flowers don't grow by magic. I sat beside her on the old iron bench, watching bees bounce between blossoms. You know, she said after a long sip, Mary called me last week. Oh? She said you were being distant. I raised an eyebrow. I think I've just stopped chasing her. She didn't like that. I didn't expect her to. Grandma turned to me, her eyes crinkling with something soft. You didn't do anything wrong. Setting boundaries doesn't make you bad, it makes you brave. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just sat with her in the sun and let the peace settle. By the time summer rolled around, things in my life felt lighter. It wasn't that everything was perfect. It was that I had, slowly and without realizing it, created space for myself. Quiet, unremarkable space where no one else's expectations were weighing me down. And that space made room for peace. I started doing things I used to talk myself out of. I joined a community gardening group. I went to a weekly book club at the library, not to lead it, just to sit and listen and talk like a participant. I started baking again, mostly muffins and simple breads, nothing fancy. I gave them away to neighbors, to kids who hung out in the library, to the elderly man down the street who always waved from his porch. I was still me. Still quiet. Still more comfortable with books than people. But I wasn't shrinking anymore. In June, my mom called again. This time it was different. Her voice was shaky. "I just wanted you to hear it from me," she said. "Your father's been in the hospital. A mild heart attack. Nothing major, they say, but it shook him." I didn't respond right away. "Do you want to see him?" she asked gently. "I don't know." "It's okay if you don't." "Really?" I thought about it for 2 days. Not about whether I forgave him. That was too big, too loaded. But whether I had anything I still needed to say. I wasn't sure. Eventually, I went. Not for him but for myself. To know that I could stand in that room and not crumble. He was sitting upright when I walked in, hooked up to monitors, looking 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. "Isla," he said, his voice strained. "Hi." There was a long silence. "You didn't have to come." "I know." Another pause. "I heard what happened at Thanksgiving," he said. "I should have said something." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." He looked down at his hands. "I've always been better at ignoring things than confronting them." I wanted to tell him I knew that. That I lived the fallout of that kind of behavior. But I didn't. I didn't need him to understand everything. I didn't need an apology wrapped in excuses. I just needed to stand there and see it for what it was, a man who had made choices and was now facing the cost of them. I stayed for 10 minutes. That was all I had to give. As I turned to leave, he said, "I'm sorry, Isla." I paused in the doorway. "Thank you." Back home, I told Grandma about the visit. She didn't say much, just nodded and patted my hand. She'd loved my dad once. And he'd broken more than just my mom's heart when he left. That summer, Mireille didn't come to visit. She sent our mom a birthday gift, a subscription to a Gourmet Cheese of the Month club, and posted photos of rooftop parties and charity galas in Chicago. Her life looked curated, glossy. Every inch of it was filtered through soft lighting and high angles. She didn't message me. I didn't expect her to. I still saw her name pop up when friends or coworkers talked about social media. She'd started writing little thought pieces for a local magazine in Chicago. Articles about finding your voice and authentic branding. The irony wasn't lost on me. One afternoon, I was walking past a downtown bookstore when I saw her face in the window on the back cover of an anthology. A collection of essays by young professional women on surviving and thriving in the modern world. Her contribution was titled "Becoming the Woman You Were Meant to Be." I stood there for a moment, looking at her bio. It mentioned her degrees, her PR firm, her passion for mentoring young women. There was no mention of family. I didn't buy the book. But I walked home thinking about how different two people could turn out, even with the same beginnings. At the end of July, I went with Grandma to the Kentucky State Fair. Just the two of us. She insisted on trying every single fried item she came across: fried green tomatoes, fried Oreos, fried pickles, and we wandered through the craft pavilion for hours. She bought me a little hand-sewn apron with sunflowers on it. In the car on the way home, she said, "You've changed this year." "Good or bad?" "Solid," she said. "You're standing taller. You don't look like you're waiting for anyone's permission anymore." It was the best compliment I'd ever received. A week later, I got a card in the mail from her. No occasion. Just a card with a painting of a field of poppies on the front. Inside, in her handwriting, it said, "You are growing things in silence. Things no one else will understand until they see them bloom." I cried when I read it. Not from sadness. From recognition. That summer, I didn't see Mireille. I didn't see Sylvia. I saw my mother more, and I saw Grandma nearly every weekend. We talked, gardened, drank lemonade on the porch, and sometimes didn't talk at all. Just sat in the quiet, which felt full instead of empty. One day, as I was heading out to run errands, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me swipe the screen. Hello? There was a pause. Then, Isla? It's Mireille. Her voice was off. Softer. A little uncertain. Hi, I said cautiously. She paused, took a breath. I think I messed things up more than I realized. There was a long silence. I don't know what you want from me, I said honestly. Or what you're looking for right now. I don't know either. I just know I miss you. I stood in the parking lot outside the farmer's market, heart pounding, keys in hand. And I realized something: I didn't miss her. Not the version she'd been to me for the past 10 years. But I didn't hate her either. She was my sister. Complicated. Flawed. And maybe just starting to see how sharp her words had become. I don't have answers for you, I said. But I'm not going to pretend anymore. Okay, she whispered. That's fair. And that was all. No apology. No explanation. Just the beginning of something unformed and uncertain. The phone call from Miri lingered in my head longer than I expected. Not because I was hopeful or waiting for a reconciliation, but because something about her voice was different. Worn down. And not in the performance kind of way. But I didn't chase it. I didn't follow up, didn't offer to meet for coffee, didn't fill the silence she left after that call. I'd done that too many times before. This time, I decided, if Miri really wanted to rebuild something, she'd have to reach out again and she'd have to do it differently. Over the following weeks, life returned to its usual rhythm. I helped the library put together its annual autumn reading program, volunteered to organize a local author fair, and kept my weekends reserved for tending my little garden and spending time with Grandma and my mom. Then came early October and something interesting happened. One afternoon at the library, I received a call from a woman named Talia Reyes. She introduced herself as an event planner for the Bluegrass Women in Business Conference. I'd heard of it as an annual professional conference for career women across Kentucky and surrounding states. Talia said she'd been following some of the community literacy outreach I'd been doing and wanted to know if I'd consider speaking on a panel about building grassroots initiatives that empower underserved populations. I was stunned. Flattered. A little terrified. But I'm not a businesswoman, I said. I'm just a librarian. You're a woman building something meaningful in her community, Talia said. That's the whole point of the panel. I agreed, eventually. Nervously. And started preparing. A few weeks later, I received the event program in the mail. There, listed under the keynote lineup, was a familiar name: Miri Whitmore, public relations strategist, founder of Voice Forward, and lifestyle columnist. My stomach turned. It wasn't scary this time. It wasn't intimidation. It was something else entirely: clarity. She was scheduled to give a talk titled, Owning Your Narrative, Reinventing Yourself and Taking Up Space. The irony was almost laughable. I debated pulling out of the event. But then I remembered something Grandma said that summer: you're allowed to take up space. So I didn't withdraw. I showed up. The conference was held at a large hotel ballroom in downtown Louisville. There were rows of chairs, big digital screens, fancy gift bags at every seat. It was her kind of world. Polished, curated, perfectly lit. I arrived early and slipped into the crowd quietly. When it was time for my panel, I took the stage in my black slacks and sunflower blouse, no power suit, no dramatic earrings, just me. And I spoke. Not loudly, not with flair. But with clarity and conviction. I told stories about watching kids light up when they got their first library card. About helping job seekers navigate resume software on outdated computers. About a 72-year-old man who learned to email his grandchildren for the first time. I talked about what it meant to be the kind of person who stays, who shows up quietly, consistently, without applause. When the panel ended, people came up to me. They asked about starting library programs in their own towns. A few cried. One woman told me, "You reminded me that being small doesn't mean being insignificant." I saw Mary later that afternoon. She was standing in a group, laughing with a man holding a tablet and another woman in a silk pantsuit. When she turned and caught sight of me, her face changed just for a second. She excused herself and approached. "You're on the program," she said. Her tone was level, unreadable. "I am." She glanced down at my name badge, then up at me again. "You've changed." "Have I?" I said, smiling. "Or maybe I've just stopped pretending I wasn't already enough." That was the first time I saw her falter. For years, Mary had built herself on being the one with the spotlight, the influence, the story. And now, in a space where she'd come to hold court, the sister she'd spent years undermining was not only present, but being listened to. And not because I was dramatic, or charismatic, or a social media darling. But because I had done the work. Quietly. Consistently. "I read your piece in that anthology," I added. "The one about becoming the woman you were meant to be." She blinked, surprised. "I think you forgot to mention that sometimes, becoming her means apologizing to the people you stepped on along the way." For once, she didn't deflect. She didn't smirk. She just nodded slightly and said, "You're right." And she walked away. That was the revenge. No slammed doors. No big confrontation. Just the undeniable reality that I had become someone she couldn't ignore. Not because I fought her. But because I outgrew the space she tried to keep me in. I didn't need to ruin her career. I didn't need to outshine her. I didn't even need her to suffer. She had to live with the fact that the sister she dismissed had found something she never truly had: self-respect that didn't depend on being seen. And that, in a world obsessed with image, was the sweetest revenge of all.